Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. For the benefit of those watching on our YouTube channel, members of the committee are present in the chamber, and these members will be voting on proposals this evening. Other members of the council who are also present in the chamber or participating via MS Teams can take part in any discussions, ask questions, but cannot vote. Your attention is drawn to agenda item 1, which sets out the guidance on how meetings will be conducted. Before we start with the formal business, we will confirm attendance of voting members by doing a roll call.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
If you could just confirm you're present when I call your name. Councillor Oakley.
Present.
Councillor Apple.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Bell, substituted by Councillor Rhodes.
Present.
Councillor Bishop.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Cannon.
Present.
We've had apologies from Councillor Cope, substituted by Councillor Oliver.
Present.
Councillor Davis.
Present.
Councillor Hickmott.
Present.
Councillor Hood.
Present.
Councillor Hoskins. We've had apologies from Councillor Hudson, who is substituted by Councillor Lark. Councillor King.
Present.
Councillor Memmott.
Here.
Councillor Palmer.
Present.
Councillor Thornywell.
Present.
And Councillor Williams.
Present.
I can confirm we have 17 voted members in the chamber this evening, Chair.
Thank you. Would the officers like to introduce themselves? We'll start with Alice.
Alison Paris, Principal Democratic Services Officer.
Jill.
Good evening, everyone. Jill Fox, Policy, Scrutiny and Communities Manager.
Thank you. And online we've got Eleanor Hoyle.
Good evening, Eleanor Hoyle, Director of Planning, Housing and Environmental Health.
Thank you very much. Right. Who else have we got? He's not actually. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Right. Item 2, apologies. We've had those. And substitute members, that was item 3. Are there any declarations of interest? That's item 4. Looking around the room, no. Minutes. The minutes of the ordinary and extraordinary meetings held on the 11th and 26th September 2024, respectively, are they confirmed as a correct record?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I'll time those in a minute. Item 6, any executive decisions called in?
No, there haven't been.
Thank you. We'll go on to item 7, which is the corporate key performance indicators, and Jill will speak to this.
Yes, as you'll be aware, the covering report and the annex provide the key performance indicator data up until September this year, and they're all aligned to our corporate strategy. I won't go through in detail. We haven't received any questions in advance, but just to highlight the good news items in section 5.2, victim-based crimes have dropped in Q2. Website My Account registrations continue to increase, along with the TMBC app downloads. Staff vacancies are at their lowest point since KPIs were collected, and the percentage handled rate at customer services has also increased. The areas for focus are also noted in this section. Social media clicks and engagement has dropped slightly, but I think there's a caveat in this, in that the summer marketing campaign saw a significant increase. I think that's explained in the annex. And sickness absence has increased slightly, although this was from a very low base rate. If there are any specific questions, they can be emailed to Jeremy Whittaker.
Mark Hood.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a general question. Obviously, the KPIs are changing. We're going to have a refined set of KPIs that apparently the leader, the chief executive, and Jeremy Whittaker are working on. Who makes the decision about what are the definitive KPIs that we're going to end up? Who's under whose remit is that going to be?
Sure. Can you answer that?
I'll try and answer it. The process that I'm aware of that's happening at the moment is that the discussions are in place. They're looking at the KPIs, making sure they're meaningful and they are actually sort of relevant to our corporate strategy. There'll be some back and forth at management team, I'm sure, with the chief executive and the directors, and then it will be reported to members.
Oh, did you want to come back?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So it will come back to the full council, or will it come back to will the relevant ones come back to the specific cabinet committees? And by the second part of my question is, are we going to, as the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, are we going to see the full set of KPIs in future coming here if they're not coming to those scrutiny committees?
Okay, rather than me having a stab at this and getting it wrong, I'm going to say that the full reporting process will be circulated to the members of this group so that you know the route that this is going to be.
Thank you very much. Any other question? No. Okay, well, that was an information item. So we'll move on to agenda item 8, which is the review of Tunbridge Community Forum and Parish Partnership Panel. You can start on that as well.
Yep, just to provide a very brief summary, you'll be aware that we had the scoping report, which is attached to Annex 1, where we discussed reviewing Tunbridge Community Forum, sorry, and along with that, we decided that there'd also be helpful to have a look at Parish Partnership Panel. There's details in the report of all of the current membership of the forum. So for those of you who aren't familiar, you can see the types of groups that usually attend. And the terms of reference state it is a vehicle for the exchange of information, consultation and a structured dialogue between the Borough Council and those Tunbridge-based groups which share interest in enhancing the well-being of the town through identification of problems and joint working towards solutions. So we had a number of proposals, and so we've done a little bit of consultation with the members of the group and asked them what their thoughts are about the group so far. Views have been sought, and they're attached in Annex 1. So looking at the responses, it's evident that there is a preference for in-person meetings. At the moment, I believe they alternate between in-person and online, and all bar one respondent expressed a strong preference to move to in-person. Views were expressed in relation to the way information is shared, and it was stated that a more of an open dialogue would be more meaningful for some members rather than just having presentations. So a little bit more chance to input into the way the meeting is going. There was one written comment received in relation to the venue expressing a preference to remain at the Angel Centre. However, both the chair and the vice chair of Tunbridge Community Forum have expressed their views that the meeting should be moved to another venue and suggested Tunbridge Methodist Church. Promotion's going to continue via our media team. We've had 2 additional groups have come forward expressing an interest to join the forum. With regards to Parish Partnership Panel, although we did do some consultation and I had a number of responses back, they did ask for more time and for it to be discussed at their next meeting of PPP. So I think that's coming week, so we'll be able to discuss with the members of the Parish Partnership Panel when they're all together how they share. So looking at the recommendations, first page of the report, following is recommended to Cabinet that the venue for Tunbridge Community Forum is moved to Tunbridge Methodist Church on a trial basis for all meetings in 2025. Meetings of Tunbridge Community Forum are all held in person rather than virtually Teams on a trial basis for all meetings in 2025. Following a topic or item raised at Tunbridge Community Forum, A section should be dedicated to open discussion to provide an opportunity for all members to discuss and respond to the item, and that the initial responses in relation to parish partnership panel are shared at their next.
Thank you. 2 speakers. Dennis. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I don't have a problem with any of that. I'd just like to understand some clarification on why item 3.3 is there. Following a topic or item raised at Tunbridge Community Forum, a section should be dedicated to open discussion to provide an opportunity for all members to discuss and respond to the item. I thought that's already happened, and I thought Lee makes that happen. I'm not really sure why it's there.
Respond to that.
Yeah, I was just trying to reflect the fact that somebody had said in the responses that they didn't feel they had an opportunity to speak. I mean, it's one comment back. You're never going to please everybody in the group, but I just thought I should include that.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I just think it already happens, and it is a discussion group, and that's what happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark Rhodes.
Along the same vein, actually, of thought, the topic raised at Tunbridge Community Forum should be asked beforehand, should it not? And so a section then be dedicated. Can we tidy that up a little bit? Because that just seems like a free-for-all, and I wouldn't want that to turn into a Green Party membership drive anywhere down the line. So, on
the other hand, if I could just
That's fine.
interrupt, we don't have politics in this committee. Thank you. I'll let Lee respond to that.
Oh, thank you. We all right? Yeah, good. Thank you for that comment. Lovely, super, just what we needed. I think that there are a number of groups there in the forum who would just like an opportunity perhaps to have any other business if something's come up more recently. So I think where they're looking for a specific answer from the council or a specific report or to hear about plans, I think it's right that that comes up beforehand and we have a chance to give them a really good answer. But I think it's a networking event as well. So if people just want to chat at the end of it, and you know what, if you don't like it, don't come.
Thank you, Wendy Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. Although I think that having a review on a regular basis is a good thing, these two organisations, the PPP and the Tunbridge Forum, may be of the same species, but they're definitely not the same animal. And I don't think that one of them should be forced to follow the line that the other one is following, wherever we go to. I think they all need to be totally independent in their reviews.
Thank you.
I think that's completely fine. They are separate meetings entirely, and I think the idea to defer any decision on PPP and have an open discussion at your next meeting is probably a good one.
Thank you, Franny.
Thank you. I'd just like to talk about recommendation 3.3 because I absolutely see why it's there. I've had members of different groups say to me, and have often felt it myself, that councillors do tend to dominate those discussions. And my feeling is that we should be there to listen to the different groups of Tunbridge. It's the only opportunity they have, not having a parish council. It's the only chance they get to listen and discuss all the different issues in Tunbridge and to give their own views. And I think actually that one there serves as a reminder to us as councillors that we actually get the chance to discuss the issues in council at different meetings. And really, we have a duty to be listening rather than speaking ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, James Lark.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with Councillor Lee Athwell. It is a networking group. It's not a decision-making body, but it does give. And I, before, when I was once chair of that, and I rescoped it, and it was the Tunbridge Forum, and it became the Tunbridge Community Forum, because it was becoming a war zone. Yes, a previous leader used to take it upon himself to engage in warfare, and I didn't have, and I had comments from groups which I'm associated with, no, Lee's associated, and they said we're not coming anymore because it's just a political battleground. And they are perfectly free to speak their own views and share events and gain help from each other, etc. And councillors have to be able to speak, and they also, quite rightly, Franny, have to be able to listen. So I think that PPP and Tunbridge Community Forum are different beasts, but they are in many ways similar. Thank you.
Mark Hood.
Thank you very much, Chair. I entirely agree with Councillor Hoskins, and I also welcome 3.3. I think it is a very much needed reminder to us. I also agree with Councillor Lark regarding the way that this forum used to function. It used to be tedious because people used to turn up and they would be subjected to a lecture about what had been happening and what the business of not only this council but the other Maidstone-based council. And thankfully, we don't have that anymore. We got both of those sections went a long time ago, along with the question and answer session. So I think it is evolving. I'm very pleased to see that it's going to be face to face, and we as members are asked to come up with cost saving measures for this council, and this is a cost saving measure by taking it to the Methodist Church. We are not going to have to pay the Angel Centre. We're not going to have to pay for the audiovisual services that are provided. So I think this is very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Not a member of your committee. The problem you have at the Tunbridge Community Forum with all the members not being able to get a word in edgeways is similar to the problem we have at the Parish Partnership Panel. And it's more a question of education. It's behoven to us to ensure these people do put their words forward. We're used to speaking all the time, and some of them are not. We need to find ways to educate them into getting involved. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I've got any more speakers. So we'll go to the recommendations. Can I take them on block? Does everyone agree with them?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, on to agenda item 9, which is the Agile report. And we've got Eleanor online. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. There were just a few key points that I wanted to pick out of the report. At 4.3, there's an update on their work on Places, which is effectively the public protection side of the council's services that are moving to Agile. Although the milestone was met on Monday, it was only partially met, as there have been some significant data issues that we're working through. So there continues to be that significant workload pressure on the super users, who are the staff in each team who are designated to do some of the configuration of the Agile system. We await the programme mentioned at 4.4 around the various work areas relating to the built environment modules. So I would have to say, as I sit here today, when I produced this report, the end of 2024 deadline that's in there for some of those actions was set at that point in time, but not having a programme in the middle of November, I would say that some of those timescales are at risk. Section 5 of the report starts to look towards the way forward and a lot of the ongoing activity that we need to do to try and keep this programme on track. There is significant ongoing work and capacity being taken up both by the services and by our colleagues in IT who are working to support various teams. We are trying alongside all of that to prepare for post go live for the Places services, and also keep the roadmap of enhancements on track. So this is what Agile talk about their development pipeline. So ideas that come from customers and from their own developers about how the product could be improved are set out on a roadmap and delivered in various releases. We are also seeking to take part in Agile's user forums. These are currently under review as they've been taken over by a larger software provider, i.e. G4, and they're looking to consolidate some of their processes, but we will continue to be involved in those. And we are also carrying out our post-implementation reviews. The only other point I wanted to draw members' attention to was the dual risk that's outlined at section 7 of the report. One around the implementation side of things, which does lessen as we move through various implementations, and the other being around the embedding of the system into our practice, and how we seek the continual improvement of that and make it part of our everyday. So those are the key issues that I wanted to pick up from what's in the report, but very happy to take questions.
Thank you, Eleanor. Dennis King.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a huge user of Agile, so I don't say this from any perspective expertise, but basically reading the information in front of me. A number of the major projects are due to complete at the end of 2024, which is about 5 weeks ago. So I just wondered if Eleanor could give us a fix on that, because I think you vaguely mentioned, or you did mention there, that there was some slippage. And the other one that is mentioned is the end of the financial year for the next financial year, which is getting on for 18 months away. So there's sort of two extremes. But also, as I understand it, the Agile system was not tailor-made for our requirements. It was largely off the shelf, and it's been developed on the hoof. And it worries me slightly that if this process will be on track, such that when the old system is removed, we will have, if you like, a transparent transfer. So I just wonder if you could answer those points, please, Eleanor, from a layman's perspective. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And it is.
Did you want to do that, or do you want to hear some more?
Shall I do those ones first, Councillor Oakley? Is that
yes,
okay?
That's fine.
Yes, as I said in my introduction, Councillor King, the end of 2024 deadlines, I think they are at risk. I was hoping that I would have had the programme this week for those remaining pieces of work. Some of them are fairly small in terms of the amount of work, but it's the wider process that goes on around that, with our teams then having to test and identify any outstanding issues, and Agile potentially refining those bits of development that need to happen. The end of the financial year that's mentioned is the end of this current financial year, 24 to 25. So that's actually a March next year deadline. And in terms of the system, and again, this is very much from a layman's perspective and as a senior officer in managing and overseeing a lot of the services who are using this, I do think there is development to happen in the system in a number of places. And that has proven really, really tricky to manage as we've been implementing these and starting to use them. Huge credit to particularly the planning teams and building control who are using the APAS module and have been joined latterly by street naming and numbering and land charges more recently, who are managing to utilise the system. That we haven't ground to a halt, but there are challenges in using the system. The date of transfer, so in terms of the Places teams, is that they should be going live in February next year. That is still fairly tight against the end of March deadline for when the current operating system will no longer be available, and that does remain a really significant risk in terms of making sure we've done everything we can. So again, there's work ongoing with IT around system backups, being able to still access data, and putting in place as many mitigations as possible.
Thank you, David Thornwell.
Thank you. Can I raise two areas? The first one is at paragraph 4.4, where it says work area land terrier. I always think land terrier is a bit archaic, but anyway, presumably what that means is a record of the land which the borough council owns. Now, we at the parish council frequently get, not me, but the parish clerk gets people referred to her because they come to the parishes, they've been round all the us and the county council as to who owns bits of land, particularly like in North Larkwood, where there's lots of little bits all scattered about. And generally speaking, we know, but I'm always surprised that the staff here currently don't have an instant access to show what land we own. And I recall when we were going through the exercise concerning possibly developing bits of land, we didn't apparently know instantaneously that in relation to the site at Holtwood in Aylesford, that there were restrictive covenants that precluded it being developed. And I'd have thought if you have a decent system, and I assume, and I ask the question, have we registered all land that belongs to the borough council voluntarily with the land registry, which would do some years ago? Because there might be land that was acquired before 56 and was therefore be unregistered. But will we be able to tell under this new system? And I don't want an instant. It seems to me the whole purpose of IT should be to speed things up and make them clearer, and not the reverse. So will we then be able, the staff here, be able to tell what land the borough council owns? Then my second thing regarding this system is, as someone who looks at the planning applications that members raise with me, such as in Area 3, it's really difficult to find out particularly what the parish council is saying. And I'm always concerned to find out what the parish council is saying. And I know there are other systems which flag up that comments have been made by the parish council. But here you have to go through all the list to try and find out what the particular parish council has said. And it's really tedious.
No.
On the first section, David, I am no expert in land terrier and property management, and so I don't know the detail of exactly what the modules they currently use do or will do in the future. But that's something that I can pick up with Stuart Edwards, who is going through his configuration process with Agile at the moment, and ensure that you get a clear answer around what the functionality will be.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the second point, and I think a number of members have raised similar points about some of the functionality of the planning portal. I don't disagree at all. Clunky is a word that gets used frequently in feedback that I get. Yeah, it's not ideal, and it's something that we've asked Agile to look into, but that would be something that was then on that roadmap that I referred to. So something that I discussed briefly with Councillor Oakley recently was how best we might draw together some detailed member feedback on the issues that you as end users and frequent end users of the portal are experiencing, and what things get reported back to you really specifically around functionality and different things that you're looking for, so that we can make sure we share that with Agile in a really productive way, and ask them for sort of specific responses. Is there anything they could deal with now, and how do we get that firmly onto their roadmap for as soon as possible? So potentially, rather than going through individual issues like that this evening, perhaps if I could suggest I could send something out to members and they could feed back to me, and we will collate a set of comments and run those past Councillor Oakley to make sure we think it's captured everything, and that's what we'll share with Agile on behalf of members.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but actually I think this should have been done as Agile sort of was coming on board, because members have not been consulted about the functionality of Agile, and we all use it. But that seems to have been ignored. Anyway, sorry, I will get off my soapbox. Paul Hickmott.
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm looking at the overall cost of the scheme, which is £548,660. I'm rather hoping it doesn't keep going up and up, because it is really expensive. I calculate if we get £50,000 a year back, it's going to take us, say, 10 years, allowing for inflation on the prices. I would have thought by then the system probably would have been out of date. I really do feel sorry for the planning team, because this is obviously not a happy place to be in, and I really do hope that they can unravel it and sort it out, and we don't get any more horrible surprises cost-wise.
Thank you. Do you want to answer that, or I'll continue with other members?
If you want to continue, Councillor Oakley, and I'll pick up some together, perhaps.
Okay, that's great. Dave Davis.
Thank you. I've got two questions, please. Firstly, Agile is categorised as a red risk still. Why is that? The second one is it's a little bit parochial, but it does affect the parish councils very badly indeed. And that is that there's no replacement yet for List D, the completed closed planning applications. And can we get some progress on that as a matter of some urgency? Thanks.
Chris Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In my old day job hat on, I've seen quite a few IT systems brought in, which never have gone particularly easily. But this one seems to be particularly bad. I mean, staff generally work through the system and the problems, but we've been at this with phase one for about a year now. When can we expect it to be operating properly? Because it is impacting on staff, as has been said, and performance of the authority.
Would you like to come back on that, Helen?
Yes, so if I take that set of comments, in terms of your point, Anita, I mean, I think that wider feedback has been heard, and I know shared with IT colleagues. So if they're looking at a system, then actually how end users will experience that and what the functionality might be should potentially be more of a consideration in our specification. So I think that's come through very clearly as a lesson learned from this process. It's certainly been part of our feedback in service, because also the other end users that we hear from are members of the public who come through to, in particular, the planning team and share that position as well. So I think that's been heard loud and clear. In terms of, some of the comments about impact on staff, the planning team have done a gargantuan task, given the amount of information they deal with and the amount of documents, and continue to work really hard to make the system work as effectively and efficiently as possible. And there are a few key things on this list that will improve their situation dramatically. Councillor Brown is absolutely right. Some of those have taken an inordinately long period of time and are not yet resolved. In the last few weeks, Damien has met with IEG4, who's the new company that's taken over the Agile system. He's met with their chief executive. I subsequently have had a meeting with their chief operating officer, and we have been very clear with them about our disappointment in their performance, and have asked for some clear indications of when outstanding tasks will be delivered. I am awaiting a programme on those phase 2 tasks, and that's what puts the December deadlines that I mentioned at risk. But we've absolutely escalated it, and wait to see the outcome of those meetings. And we couldn't agree more about the priority of getting those things done. That also includes some of the other reporting mechanisms that we've been asking for, and for development or replacement of. So that includes the list of determined applications. And again, it's always useful following a meeting like this. This is also another opportunity for myself and Damien and colleagues to be able to say to them, this has been raised in a public forum by our members in a report that is titled Agile. firmly linked to the performance of their company, and use that to really drive home our point. In terms of the red risk, the two issues are laid out at section 7 of the report. For me, given the series of issues we've had in getting to implementations, until I'm within a week or two of an implementation for the public protection teams early next year, that risk is not diminished significantly enough at this point, given the outstanding amount of work to get there, for me to say that it's not a red risk and couldn't cause significant impacts on an ongoing basis. And then in terms of the embedding risk, I think to pick back up on the point that Councillor Brown made, given that some of those tasks have taken over a year and they're still not completed, again, that is having a significant service impact. And that's why, for me, overall, the risk remains red. As I'm sure you can imagine, colleagues, in charge of risk management, we talk about this on a regular basis and really test all of the mitigation that's in place. And is there anything we can do to start bringing that down towards a high amber? And I really hope that we can do that really soon. But I don't think I could suggest that sat here talking to members this evening.
Thank you. I've got 5 speakers. Mark Rhodes.
Chairman, thanks. So 4.2 land charges module has gone live. The report says that we have been the cause of delays due to resource issues, and there are risks to the business as usual. So was there a plan at all to prioritise? Did we, for example, ask officers to work overtime? And while I'm on the floor, can we please get back to a decent B list that isn't so big you've got to move the whole page around the on the iPad? Much.
Thank you. Lee.
You just a couple of things. The first was just an observation about IT making our lives easier. And of course it should, and the functionality is clunky, it doesn't, but actually it's often the data that's the problem. So if we don't have information about who holds what land charge, it doesn't matter how good the IT system is. So it's just good for us to differentiate those two things. A couple of things, just looking at what's written here. In the risk assessment part, it talks about using our remaining consultancy time with Agile to work through GDPR matters. Is that something that we weren't expecting? Because you would expect any new system to be GDPR compliant. So I'm just wondering if we hadn't tested that when we chose the system. Similarly, with the approach to upgrades, that would be a question you would ask up front. Is that because the company's changed hands and they've changed their approach? And then looking at the 6.1, where we talk about enhancements. So I'm taking the assumption that means enhancements we have asked for. And I just wanted to ask the question about whether those enhancements are now part of the product itself, or whether we're waiting for that to branch back into the main software, whether we're going to end up on some horrible little cul-de-sac of code. And then lastly, we've had a similar issue with the housing team, haven't we, where we've done a systems implementation and the teams have ended up on their knees and business as usual has been impacted. So can we please in future double whatever our estimates are for staff time when we do systems implementations, because it seems twice now we've got it horribly wrong to the detriment of both the business as usual teams, and that's really hard. So whoever's doing those estimates for that business implementation, and I think we employed somebody to be a business implementation manager here, has got that horribly wrong, and please can we not use them again?
Thank you, Eleanor.
Okay, I'll come back on those. Thank you, Councillor Oakley. In terms of the land charges team, yes, part of the issue has been that we have a very small team and there's a significant amount of work. The programme was amended accordingly, just to ensure that we could get that delivered. And they have also had some absolute peaks of work. So a couple of really key points in the programme when they needed to be focusing time on Agile, and when we get searches in, and again this is very much in layman's terms, I can get more detail if members want it. When we accept searches, we then have a certain amount of time to complete them, and they had 2 unusually large search requests that completely coincided with a really significant period in the Agile implementation programme. Those staff work an incredible amount of hours in any case. And there was no capacity for overtime. There was an attempt because this is also been running alongside the changeover to land registry of some of our systems and how some of that works corporately. There was an attempt to bring in a member of staff earlier in the year to support that team, and unfortunately that wasn't successful. Somebody did come, but they weren't a good fit, and so actually then the time taken out for the very small team, the very committed, hardworking team, to try and train somebody had actually caused more of a problem than it had resolved. And so we decided to slightly amend the implementation programme for land charges to work through that. In terms of the formatting of List B, I know issues have been looked at around things like drop-down menus, etc. If it's still causing issues to open on the iPad, Councillor Rhodes, I wasn't aware of that, so I will pick that up with the team and have a look at whether there's anything else we can do about the formatting of the spreadsheet. In terms of Councillor Athwell's points, GDPR, the system was procured as compliant. What we need to do is assure ourselves through rigorous testing that the way that system interprets data means that when you put certain rules into it, for example, that it's only removing the bits that it needs to, and that we're really, really clear that that's going to happen, because particularly in a service like planning, we obviously hold a huge amount of historic data, some of which we have a requirement to hold all the way back to the 40s, and so we just need to make entirely sure that our teams really understand exactly how all of that works, and that's the reference to using some additional time to make sure we get that entirely right and can implement it moving forward. With regards to the upgrades process, in service, we weren't aware of what the process would be. That would be run by IT. My assessment is that the way that Agile approached one of the first upgrades that we had wasn't fit for purpose. That's been fed back to them. IT have told them in no uncertain terms what is expected from future upgrades, and that has all been agreed between IT colleagues and Agile. The enhancements mentioned are enhancements to the core package, but they are pieces of software and additions to the software that Agile have already developed. They're not specific for us. One of them was that we got one almost at the front of the queue, because it was a particular need for us. And one is something that they are offering to and rolling out with it with a number of clients. So they are part of the product, and we're not in any sort of individual journey with them on those. And in terms of the housing system implementation, in terms of Hume, it's the reason that is very different, and the reason for the backlog is not solely, or indeed the majority, down to the computer system. It is down to the fact that we made a decision to implement our new allocation scheme at the same time as the new system. Now, that is the bit of hindsight that that we need to apply, because actually the two coming together, so end users and our staff working through documents on a new system, albeit that most of it's very intuitive, plus everyone on our register being asked to reapply, caused a really significant peak in workload, much more significant than we were expecting it to be, and we are speeding back up. But in addition to that, now, as I know we've discussed with members previously and is given out as part of our updates, the number of new applications also continues to rise quite significantly, so that list stays quite long. So that's where I would just differentiate it slightly from Agile, because actually there was more than one issue layered on there. And the business change project manager, the reason I can give you all of this information and detail and tell you that we know what work the teams in Places need to be doing on Agile, for example, is because of the work that she does. She was brought in later, not at the start of the project, at my request, because we did not have anyone internally project managing what needed to be happening in our relationship with Agile and our implementation on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. So she wasn't in charge of the implementation before it commenced.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So I think that's the lesson, isn't it? That we must engage those people earlier. Thank you.
Much. Adam.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a sort of couple of questions. I'll try and get to them fairly quickly. So just to echo what's been said about just how awful this is as a sort of external user, and I use this system probably more than other people in the chamber, both as my role as a councillor and my day job as well. when I try and get on Agile or the the external face of it and find planning documents, it's difficult enough for me to do it, and I sort of know what I'm looking for. So I'm trying to picture it from a resident who has got a letter through their door saying there's a planning application nearby. They're going to try and go on the website and find the information they need to know, and it's going to be really, really difficult for them. So probably the next thing they're going to do is they're going to pick up the phone, or they're going to send emails to the case officer, which is going to take up more of their time. So, the whole strategy we're trying to do is sort of self-service, and this whole thing seems to be really counterintuitive to that. So I think we do need, maybe some clearer timeframes at the next time this comes on for what efforts are being made to kind of improve the usability of this for, for residents, for councillors, everyone trying to use it. Linked on to that, I mean, how are sort of planning staff particularly coping with this sort of additional drain on time? Do we feel it's impacting workloads? Is there, certain support measures that management are sort of putting in if that is the case? And then the table at 4.4, for example, says there's a backlog of pre-app cases to be inputted by TMB staff. So what sort of numbers are we talking about there? And do we think that backlog is going to be done by, so I guess that's what, April next year, end of financial year? So it'd be useful to understand a bit more about that. And finally, obviously this is quite a technical kind of matter. There's lots of IT related issues, and I notice our head of IT isn't here today. I think the last time this came up, I think he was sort of logging on virtually, but I can't help but think it would probably be quite useful for members of this committee to maybe have him there and kind of provide some further kind of advice on these things. So yeah, that's my questions. Thank you, Chair.
There's quite a lot to unpack there. You'd like to answer that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Absolutely, on your first point, Councillor Mehmet, about accessing information, and I think that goes back to the earlier conversation we had about putting together some information and pressing on those timescales, which I will absolutely take an action to do. In terms of the staff in planning, as I said before, huge amounts of effort, and I think there are a number of workload pressures. Caseloads generally, and needing to make sure those are dealt with within certain timeframes, etc. But yeah, having a system that hasn't been working as staff have needed it to, and potentially finding, you quickly settle into rhythms, don't you, of finding ways to make things work for you whilst issues are being resolved, and the team has done an incredible job in doing that to make this work and make sure that applications are still moving through the process. But yeah, in some areas it might have sped up some individual processes, and in others it's probably slowed them down at the moment, and that's not the level of efficiency that we need to be seeing from it. In terms of support measures in place for staff, we've tried where we can to move workloads around to still use the super users who helped implement the system in planning, because they built up such a fantastic cache of knowledge. We want to make sure we keep using that, but potentially amending other bits of their workload accordingly where that's been able to work. And more generally, I think obviously we still need staff to be processing applications and meeting targets, and all of those important things, but trying to make sure that they know that where problems are being caused by the system, no one's been blamed for those issues. We're really trying to work with staff and let them know that we all have to figure this out, and sometimes that might change from week to week, and just try and be as supportive as possible in that way. And also sometimes just be really honest that we don't have all of the answers right now, and that we're trying our best as well as management to work through it. In terms of the pre-apps and the numbers, so that backlog exercise won't be a backlog of pre-app inquiries, and forgive me if that's not quite clear in the document reading it back. That's existing cases that have been managed manually or through spreadsheets rather than on the system, needing to be back uploaded, and we do think that with the time period proposed, that there is sufficient capacity to enable that to be kind of built into a weekly list of tasks over a number of months. In terms of attendance at committee, I suppose, I will take that away and speak with colleagues. It very much at times depends on the type of questions initially asked when these reports are asked for, and as the SRO for the Agile programme, when the questions have been about process and progress, etc., then they're as much for me to answer as anybody else, I would say. But yes, in terms of some of the more technical aspects, that's not something that I could expertly advise members on, and you wouldn't want me to. So given some of the questions asked tonight, and that I suspect we'll be coming back again to talk to you about Agile, I will take that point away and ensure that the relevant staff are here next time.
Very much. James Clokey, you've got your hand up online.
Thank you, Chair. I note in the report that there's a plan to do a series of lessons learned exercises and bring that to audit in presumably January and subsequent meetings as appropriate. And I think that's excellent. We should hopefully have some good sessions there. So I won't dwell on sort of how we got to here point. But in terms of where we are now, between now and our sort of hard deadlines, feels from the report that basically what we're saying is we have a reasonably hefty amount of work that we still need to do and have confidence in to get us to a state where we've got the minimum viable system to allow us to cut over completely and get off the old platform in time for the end of the license on that. And that our aim at this point is basically to get us something that works, even if it's a bit rough around the edges and a bit awkward to use. So is that a fair assessment of sort of where our key energy is at the moment? And then following on from that, it looks like we've got a number of enhancements we would want to take and also presumably do some work using workflow integration that I think I saw was mentioned in there, and presumably layering on some dashboarding and reporting and quality of life improvements on that. And I know we've got a reference of it costing 48k per year that we've budgeted for ongoing cost for Agile. Have we also included some budget for time and money to deliver those enhancements after we've cut over? Yeah.
Yes, do come back.
I mean, the answer to your question about whether that's a fair summary, Councillor Cokey, yes. In fact, it was an excellent summary, and I'm going to try and remember the phrasing that you've used for the next time I need to summarise the position. That's exactly where things are. And you know, from the start, Agile was a software as a service product. It's always designed to develop. These are the terms that I've learned during my time as SRO for the Agile project. It is a system that will require some ongoing development. In terms of the things you mentioned around workflow integration and dashboarding, the system does have those functionalities. And in terms of dashboarding and performance reporting, it links directly to Microsoft's Power BI, which the council is starting to use more widely in any case. So at the moment, there's no additional budget identified for specific additional work on those. I think what will need to be developed between the services and IT would be a work programme for when that could happen. We know with IT leading with their technical skills and with input from the services on specifications and requirements, and also using wherever possible and where it fits in with their wider business as usual work. Again, those fantastic skills that I referred to earlier that some of our super users are building up. Because they're probably really well placed to give IT that guidance. But at the moment, my understanding is that there's no IT budget specifically set aside for those tasks.
Thank you. I've got Mark Hood and then Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. The business change project manager. We've got they're engaged until March next year. Is given the huge amount of work that's still be implemented, as has been outlined, is there any likelihood that we're going to require their services beyond that point, and there'll be a contract extension?
So
yes, come back.
There won't be another contract extension. I think it's fair to say that councillors in cabinet have been very clear that is once we're implemented, that won't be that won't be in place anymore. One of the work streams, though, that the business change project manager and I are spending a lot of time on at the moment is what does that look like post all of the implementations, what is on the post implementation to-do list, so that we can start planning that in now. And that sort of goes back to some of Councillor Clokey's points about further bits of work that might need doing and how they get programmed into, you know, the raft of things that the council does on developing software systems, and indeed any other bits of work that might require IT support, and for that to be programmed in with IT. So putting that together and then having those conversations with the head of IT and colleagues to make sure that we've got that work programmed in will likely be the approach, rather than additional continued resource post implementation.
Thank you. Wendy.
Thank you. I'm just going to add to your list of things that need looking at, following on to Councillor Mehmet's list. I have been having issues with the call-in form. I tried to call in and it rejected it 3 times, having typed it all out, which was quite impressively annoying. The 3rd time it said successful. Let me submit it, came through, gave me an email saying thank you for your submission. It was only because I spoke to the actual officer who was dealing with it that I found out 2 days before the 21 days was up that she hadn't received, nobody had received anything. It hadn't gone through. And that can be an issue, because then I quickly resubmitted. But if you're going to stick to the 21 days and this is happening, we can't stick to 21 days because that would be unfair. You know, the system has let us down. The other one I have, where I don't know if anybody else has issues, is with the enforcement reporting. Every time I go onto it, it's a different type of form and something else pops up. And I know there are certain cases that have been put in and they're not appearing. And although it says being updated today, there's nothing on there that I know should be on there. So if you could have a look at that one as well, please. Thank you.
If I could on those, Councillor Oakley, I say this knowing full well, Councillor Palmer, that actually for you as an end user, you probably couldn't really care less which back of house system any of this works through. But just, and because I feel completely the same if I was given this answer. But the call-in form, it is a council on the council's system, council forms. It's got nothing to do with the Agile system. We've set that up separately with IT so that the notifications should come directly to myself and to Hannah Parker, because that's who the calling protocol requires to look at them. And you're absolutely right, it wasn't working. IT then unpicked the issue and I got 3 call-in requests from you in the space of 10 minutes. So they've clearly got stuck somewhere. So I know that's been worked on and that IT are looking at the system. You're absolutely right though, if there's an issue with that system, then we have to get that resolved if we're expecting members to use it. So I would just, if any members have made any call-ins recently and haven't heard from the case officer or from Hannah, and you want to check any of them, please do let me know and I will double check them and we will pick up on that issue and make sure that it is resolved. In terms of enforcement reporting, yes, you're absolutely right around information changing. The report is under development. The team were really keen to get something out to members given the queries that had been raised previously. I think perhaps again with hindsight, we wanted to provide something, but actually maybe that was slightly premature given that we're still developing our knowledge of Power BI to an extent. We're also developing our knowledge of how systems such as Agile interact with Power BI and what information gets pulled through to where. And Councillor Taylor has done a really good job in sort of talking us through some of the issues that he's noticed and had raised with him. And there's some further development work underway at the moment. But what I'll do is I'll ask the team to provide me with some further information, and maybe for now, if it's okay with members, I will send something around just to explain where we are and any issues. But again, if there is something not showing on there that a member is expecting to, just while we're in this phase of adjusting to this new type of performance reporting, again, if you spot any issues, please let me or James know immediately so that we can look into them for you and make sure that they're being captured properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. That's really helpful. James Clokey, you've got a hand up, so is that a legacy hand?
No, something occurred to me off the back of some of the comments that have been made. Just as a suggestion, thinking about getting right officers to answer the right questions, etc. Is it worth getting councillors together as a sort of user forum for a session to answer questions about problems that we're having with the system and areas where we'd want it improved? Because it feels like the people we'd want to be taking those and answering questions are different to the group we'd want for, say, the project lessons learned review that we're going to do. They feel like two very separate conversations, and maybe it's worth trying to have them as separate events with separate groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that works better for members in terms of sort of collating that feedback and talking about the issues, and I think there's probably a few members who've spoken this evening who I think would probably want to be part of that. I'm very happy to make sure that we get the right officers in the room and have that conversation to collate all of that feedback with you. Yeah, very happy to do that, Councillor Clokey.
Thank you very much. I've got no more speakers. This is a mass for information. I'd like to suggest, Eleanor, that you come back in a few months and with a report to let us know progress. Does everyone agree with that? Yeah. And your suggestion of sending a note out and asking for feedback, I think, is relevant as well. And if James's idea is, if anyone thinks that's a good idea, let me know. Dennis.
Just a quickie. Yeah, I mean, given that some of the targets are the end of this year, and you said that you were waiting for a roadmap to develop, will we be having some feedback before this proposed meeting in terms of how the project is looking and if it's on track or not? Thank you.
Yeah, again, I'm very happy. Probably I'll liaise with Councillor Tanner as the cabinet member and come up with a format of what we could share in a written update with members about the various strands of the project that are going on, so that members get an interim update before we're potentially back here for a fuller discussion in a few months.
Very much. Franny, did you indicate?
Going to say, do you need somebody to propose that we add the recommendation, or is that?
I think as it's an information item, if you
okay,
sort of leave it with me, and Eleanor is going to rush about and do some communication. I think you've frozen.
Am I back?
Okay. Oh, you're back. Oh, good. You froze. Right. So and you're happy to do to come back in a few months, do an interim report, and also send a note out with Kim Tanner. Is that what you decided? Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
I think it was, Anita.
Sorry,
Okay.
I think I'm back now. Sorry.
Yes, you are back. Yes. So I think, yes, I'm sure we're all happy, and thank you very much for letting us know all that information, and we'll look forward to your interim report and a note from yourself and Kim Tanner asking for feedback. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I think that wraps up the Agile update, and thank you for all your input. Item 10, record of decisions taken by the executive. We pulled one of those in on page 61, but that's water under the bridge. And We'll go on to the item 11, notice of forthcoming key decisions. Has anyone got any comments on that? Mark?
Yeah, isn't there another forthcoming decision that's missing in terms of the procurement of a contract for?
You are sort of correct, Councillor Hood. There's been a new notice of full committee decision published on Tuesday for the meeting of Cabinet on the 10th of December, and procurement is, and everybody should have had an email for that.
Thank you. Well noted. And the work programme for 24-25 on item 12. Tim Bishop.
Sorry, Chair, it's possibly irrelevant, but can we ask that the agenda item 10, 11 and 12 appear at the top of the page instead of me having to bend over to find it? Because on that tablet, it's turned up on the right-hand side of the thing, and I kept looking, thinking, where the hell, why is this listed?
I'm sure that could be arranged.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on. You don't know what you mean.
Would you like to look at my tablet? Right ankle.
Thank you. That was yeah, very good. Oh yes, and the next meeting is really exciting in January when we're looking at the budget. And I did send round a note to everyone asking them if they could identify any savings. It's really difficult to do that, I know. But if there's any areas of the council that you think perhaps if we looked at it, we'd be able to manage some alterations and do things differently, then let me know, because you know, I'm happy to consider anything to look at, because we're getting desperate. But yeah, so do read the budget papers for the next one, and I won't have to send out now. Right, urgent items, there are none, so I don't have to exclude press and public, and it must be a record to finish the meeting at 8:38.